Yo, what's going on, everybody? It is 1 p.m. here in Chicago, Illinois, and it's time for another live stream. Today is Tuesday, March 29th, 2022. Let me check the date on that real quick. That's all right, I got it right. March 29th, 2022. I felt confident enough about it to just tell you what the date was, to announce what the date was without looking first. Normally I have to look first. But then as soon as I said it, I was like, what if it's not March 29th? It's going to confuse everybody. It's March 29th. I got it right. And because it's Tuesday, guys, we're going to do a Trivia Tuesday. This weekend, I'm going to be running the Cherry Blossom 10 mile, the Credit Union Cherry Blossom 10 mile race. And so that's going to be the theme for today's trivia. But first, let's say hi to everyone listening in on the podcast. Hopefully you're having a good run out there today. Today in Chicago, it's still cold. It's still, I guess, very seasonal for Chicago, but I'm just ready for warm weather. It's still cold, and there was a pretty unpleasant headwind for the first half of the run, but on the way back, it was a nice tailwind. So I'm going to try to remember today's run as a nice one with a nice tailwind. Hopefully you have tailwinds today too. And everyone watching this on YouTube later, hopefully you're at the point of the day where you can relax or maybe catch up on some light menial types of tasks, doing laundry, washing the dishes, cleaning up after dinner, that kind of thing. And hopefully it's a relaxing part of your day. So now also I want to say, one of the things I've been trying to work on past couple of live streams is making sure I welcome anyone that's new. So if this is your first time in a live stream, let me know where you're watching from if you want to share that. You don't have to give me your address, but if you just want to tell me what city, and let me know that's your first time or maybe one of your first times in the chat, let me know. I'd love to be able to welcome you. And here we go. Nakato says, first time viewer, excited to join. Welcome. He's got a little peace sign in his photo. Love it. Welcome to you. Thanks for joining today. And then welcome to everyone else. We got a lot of regulars here in the chat as well. And hopefully you guys enjoy the chat. Let's see who we got. We got Vincent Veneers giving me a nice little wave emoji. Luce says, yo, what's going on? Martha with a wave as well. Dad Runner Alice here says, hey, everyone. Awesome. Terry Furlong coming in from the other side of the world saying good evening. And Pat Hicks says, yes, I finally made a live show. Welcome, Pat. All right, we got AHBC San Antonio says, greetings from San Antonio, Texas. And JC says, hello, folks. Awesome. All right. Pat Hicks, this is his first time from Wheeling, West Virginia. Awesome. You know what I think West Virginia doesn't get enough credit for? I mean, it makes sense if you think about it. But I think that West Virginia doesn't get enough credit for how good the running is over there. It's a hilly place. It's a beautiful place. It's a place where I want to do a lot more running, but I haven't had many opportunities. But it is a beautiful part of the country. And Andrew says, yo, first official half marathon this weekend. You haven't run a half marathon before? I mean, I know you've run marathons, and I know you run the distance, but I guess you've never raced one? Interesting. So on a similar, well, good luck to you, Andrew, first of all. I know you've been training a lot, so is that going to be the first half marathon? You're doing a half marathon, and then you're running Boston this year, right? Is that right? That's what I thought. So you're doing that as like a little tune-up for Boston? Awesome. I think that's what's going on, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. One of the things that reminds me of, like someone that has run a longer distance before but never raced a shorter one, is Sage was a very sage type of comment on Twitter, was talking about people like complaining about running the 1500 versus the mile in high school, and pointing out that they probably didn't run a mile, they probably ran a metric mile, a 1600. And I was like, I've never run an actual mile race before, is what I responded. And that's true. I don't think I've ever run like either a timed on the track or a chip timed race before. And that's something that I would like to change this year. Hopefully I'll be able to hop into a mile. I'm still waiting. Hopefully we can make it happen one year, that we can get like Fifth Avenue mile. It's a New Balance event. They run down Fifth Avenue. It's just you start at one end and you run down to the end. There's usually a media heat. There's a media mile. And it's usually like journalists and people that were collegiate runners and now work in like running journalism, like work at Runner's World or write for the New York Times or sports pages and stuff like that. People that are actually fast and who are actually journalists. But I would love it if there would just be like a YouTuber mile. Because I mean, I would just love to have like that would be really funny. I'd love to line up with like, let's get Thomas in there. Let's get Jamie would win. Maybe would win. If we got Connor in there, I think Connor would probably win. But that'd be fun. You know, maybe we could get Hella Sidibe in there. He'd be pretty close up there. I don't know if he could beat Connor or not. They're both really fast. But I just that's an event that I would just really want to do. All right. Andrew does clarify as he says, never raced a half. He went straight from the 5K to the marathon. That's quite a jump. Nice work. Nice work. Well, good luck. Which half are you doing? What half is going on this weekend? Terry Smith says, Mike, are you going to review the 1080 version 12s? Yes, that's my plan. I'm very excited for it. I feel like it's going to be, like, my impressions so far, I've watched a couple of videos. I try not to watch too many of other people's videos on it so I don't get too kind of like, not tainted, but like, so that I can look at it with my own fresh eyes kind of thing. But from what I've seen so far and just from the images, it really looks like a solar boost to me. So what I'm really hoping to get out of it is like I feel like the endorphin speed is like the Boston 10 that Adidas should have made. And I'm thinking that the 1080 V10 is going to be the solar boost that Adidas should have made. I feel like some of Adidas, Adidas is making really great race shoes, but as far as like other shoes, I feel like other people are making Adidas shoes better than Adidas right now. That's kind of my hope. Maybe that's where it'll fit in, but we'll see. New Balance sometimes sends me stuff. Not usually. So, like, I don't know, is the 1080 version 12 out yet? I don't think so. I feel like a lot of the shoes that I'm seeing videos for right now aren't coming out till, like, May. Maybe June. So, I'm like, you guys are going to see all these videos and going to be asking me about these shoes, but frankly, a lot of people don't send me shoes that much. There's a handful of brands that will send me a bunch of shoes, and then some brands will send me some. Like, Saucony sent me, like, the Peregrine 12. But I haven't gotten anything else from Saucony. I'd love to get more from Saucony, but I'm also happy to buy it too. Sometimes it makes it easier if I buy it, but yeah. So like, I don't know. I'm gonna get to it eventually, but it's kind of hard right now because not a lot of stuff's out. I think this is a hard time of year. This time of year happens every time this time of year. A lot of videos start coming out about shoes that are not coming out for 2 to 3 months, and I don't usually like to do that, although tomorrow's video is going to be about the Cumulus 24. I don't think that comes out till May. So there's that. So I guess I'm complaining about something that I'm doing myself. All right. Let's see. What else we got here? Martha says, a YouTuber New York mile would be great, but then you have to arrange a Kofuzi Run Club mile so we can all come. Oh man, that'd be kind of fun too. You know what I also saw? So that Trials of Miles track meet that was last year at the Icon Stadium? That Tracksmith, CDS Mag, and Trials of Miles. I'm not sure who was all involved. I think those are the people involved in that meet. They're redoing that meet again this year. They're going to run it back. And I think that there's going to be another like influencer mile. No one's asked me to be in it, but so far already, Malcolm Gladwell has been like, shots fired towards Chavez. But Chris Chavez is just like, I'm retired. I'm not racing the mile anymore. I don't think he wants to get beat by Malcolm Gladwell in the mile again. But if they did that again, I would go to that track meet. Because also, there will be open heats beforehand. So like for an hour, and I don't know if it's filled up. I think they're probably going to cap it. But depending on your pace, you can line up and race a mile at that track meet, like as the undercard for the rest of the event. Which I think is a super fun thing to do. I like it. And then you get you get a bib and a ticket. Or I guess not a bib in a track race. You get a hip sticker and a ticket to watch the meet. So I'm thinking about doing that. That's later this summer. That'll be fun. So that might be one where we can like do a mile. But I mean, if we did if I did the New York, see the thing is, The Fifth Avenue Mile is always at a bad weekend. Like every year that I've wanted, that's one of those races that's on my list of like races I want to do. Cherry Blossom is one. Falmouth was one. I did that last year. The Fifth Avenue Mile is another one. But it's always for whatever reason, it's always like at a bad time. Usually is not a great time to be trying to run a fast mile if you're training for a Chicago Marathon. So but hopefully we'll have to think of something. The other thing that I knew that today is that, and we'll get into the Cherry Blossom 10 mile trivia, but last year the Cherry Blossom 10 mile was the USATF 10 mile championship. And I was wondering if maybe it's going to be that again this year. It's not, unfortunately. But this weekend, there's apparently a sister or a sibling event to the Cherry Blossom 10 mile. It's the Sacktown 10 mile, which we all learned yesterday in the chat. Sacktown means Sacramento. And it's an event, event is a 10 mile race that runs around like downtown Sacramento, like around like the Capitol building. And it is the Masters USATF 10 mile championship. So now I'm like, oh, I kind of wish I was doing that one too. But they're on opposite sides of the country in the same exact time. Well, not the same exact time, but the same day. So there's that. All right, David Patterson says he's back from Singapore. Some very humid running. Shocked my system coming from Seattle. My heart rate skyrocketed, but very beautiful running in a botanical garden. I don't know how people run over there. And I know that there's a lot of runners in that part of the world. It's just so hot, so humid. I don't know. Oh, okay, here Andrew says, it's the Go St. Louis Half Marathon and Full Marathon this weekend. Oh, okay. That makes sense. That one though, the marathon, you run over the bridge. You run over like a bridge, like twice, right? You cross the Mississippi on that one, and that's not a narrow port. Not that many portions of the Mississippi are all that narrow, but that's a pretty wide portion of the Mississippi there, if I'm not mistaken. All right. Scotty B says, checking in from Minnesota. Who else ran extra intervals by mistake today? You ran extra intervals today? Oh boy. Oh boy. All right. Natako says, hey Kofuzi, are you going to be running the new Bank of America Half Marathon? It's 2 months away and there isn't a lot of info, which is odd. I'm thinking about it. So I got to talk to the ASICS. I think they can get me a bib for grandmas, which is later in June. And then I think that the Bank of America Half would be like 2 weeks out, which I think would be a good race for me to do, like run, 10 miles at marathon effort and then fast finish kind of thing. That'd be a good workout, or maybe just 10 marathon miles or 13 marathon miles. So I've been thinking about it just because I've never done, it's a relatively new race. Is it the first year or something like that? It's a pretty young race, I think, and I'd like to be able to try that one. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I gotta like kind of figure out like the calendar. I'm really bad at figuring out the calendar. All right, let's get to the trivia for today. All right, so first question for the Credit Union Cherry Blossom 10 mile. So it's supposed to coincide with the Cherry Blossom Festival, which goes from like mid-March to mid-April, which is when the cherry blossoms are in bloom. But and there's lots of cherry blossom trees in DC. I didn't realize that there are many like varieties of cherry blossom trees. There are many that exist in the DC area, but they're not an indigenous plant. So question is, where do the Washington DC cherry blossoms come from? At least the ones that are like planted like near the National Mall and along the Potomac and those kinds. I think that there are some that are like currently in the area that come from other places in the US. But as far as like the ones that most people will see when they're trying to tour the DC area, where do those cherry blossoms come from? Anybody know that one? I think we talked about it a little bit. I mean, you guys got it right away. You guys definitely know. Before we get to that, let's say that Shannon says that the St. Louis Marathon doesn't cross over the river. I thought it did. Because I remember I was thinking about, or does it go up a big bridge? I remember I was thinking about doing that with my running buddy one time. And I watched someone else's video about it, and it felt like they were just, you started down at the landing, and I felt like they went over a bridge into East St. Louis and then came back over. Maybe I have that. Maybe the route's changed. I don't know. Interesting. All right. And Ben Droid says, Hi from Germany. I'm running the Berlin Half Marathon this Sunday, and I'm already all hyped up. That sounds like a fun event. See, I feel like I'd like to run more half marathons. Because it's kind of like, it's like having cake and eating it too. You can do it more often, and you can recover a little bit faster. If you mess up, it's not so terrible for you. If you have a bad day or if it's bad weather, it's not so many hours in terrible conditions. So I kind of like more half marathons. All right, so as far as the cherry blossoms go, JC got it first with Japan. Super Unjit has it as well. Martha says they're from Kyoto. I believe, my understanding is that they come from, I'm not sure exactly where in Japan, but I think they're from they were a gift from like the country of Japan with special recognition to the mayor of Tokyo at the time. But a lot of you guys knew that. Everybody knew that. It was Japan. HBC stands when he said Texas. It's like a very Texas thing to do. It's just assume everything comes from Texas. Scotty B says Minnesota. Everyone just listing where they're from now. And Louis says he's from Tijuana. Awesome. Yeah, so the cherry blossoms came from, let's see where did I put it, in DC in 1912. It was a gift of friendship between the United States and Japan. And what's really surprising to me about it is that I didn't know that they were planted before World War II. And so the fact that they survived like World War II is kind of a surprise to me. And then another even bigger surprise is, so they were like grafted, or like buds came from those trees, or those trees came from like a certain stock in Japan. And then after World War II in Japan, that original like stock of trees was struggling. And so in 1952, 40 years later, budwood from the trees in DC were then shipped back to Japan to help kind of like reestablish the cherry blossom trees over there. Kind of like everything came full circle. So I think that's really, really cool. All right. JC's or Affluent Journey says the cherry blossom trees came from seeds. Here's the thing I don't understand about trees. I studied biology in college, but I very intentionally stayed away from plants. I just don't understand plants. So like trees have like pine cones, trees have like seeds that they give off and stuff like that. But then like when they're like trying to grow like new like apple trees, they have to get like a cutting from the original like one tree, and then you like splice it to an like, so I don't understand how like trees work. So I don't think all trees come from seeds. That doesn't seem right. I don't know. I'm really, really bad when it comes to plant biology. All right, let's get to question number 2. All right. So speaking of the race, the Cherry Blossom 10 mile, when was the first one? So we've done trivia on a lot of the marathons. Some of them are like over 100 years old. Some of them are a lot less old than that. How old or when was the first Cherry Blossom 10 mile? You can pretty much do a bunch of guessing with this one. Now, Pat Hicks says that it's grafting. So you're grafting from one tree to another. See, that part is like kind of bewildering because you can alter like the tree type or like some of the characteristics of the tree with the grafting. Yeah, I'm not sure how that all works. It's crazy. JC says the first Cherry Blossom 10 mile was 1492, obviously. A lot of guesses for 1492. Jason Dahl says 1982, which surprisingly isn't that terrible of a guess. It's a really good one. Steven C. 1984 says the first one was after the trees were planted. That is correct. That is technically correct. Very good. Nifty Ninja says 1990. Super Ninja says 1986. The correct answer is that the first Cherry Blossom 10 mile was in 1973. So it's an old race. Because if you count, like I hate to count how old things are when they're in the 70s, because it makes me feel old. because 1973 doesn't sound that long ago to me, but so what's that? A lot of years old now at this point. It's almost 50 years old. So this is the 49th run. I don't know if this is the 49th running, but 49 years ago was the first time it was run. So there were two kind of like main guys that were in charge of like putting this race on, and they intentionally chose the 10-mile distance, saying if it was longer, you'd be too pooped out for Boston, because Boston is just a couple weeks away after the Cherry Blossom 10 miles. And they said they also didn't want it too short. The idea was to have an attractive alternative to a marathon. So, which I think is super cool. Like they were like, the idea was the family would come in for the weekend, mom or dad would be running, and the family could see them or participate in some of the other shorter distance fun runs. And then you just make a weekend tourist weekend of it, seeing the cherry blossoms, exploring DC, the nation's capital, which is just like, that's one of my big things that I'm trying to kind of push this year, is that, races are totally fine to just show up like morning of the race or day before, get your bib, get it out, and then race and then go home. Totally cool. But like, I've just been so excited to see everyone at races again. So it's just nice to like try to make a weekend out of it if I can. So I'm really enjoying the fact that this Cherry Blossom 10 miler like started out with kind of even almost 50 years ago with that kind of idea in mind. And by the way, the first female winner of the Cherry Blossom 10 miler in 1973 was Kathy Schweitzer. So I thought that was a pretty cool little trivia fact as well. All right. Niftina says something in 1973 is ancient. Oh, that's funny. And Natsuko says, are the trees going to be blooming when you are there? I hope they'll still be blooming. I'm seeing pictures already that people are posting that the trees are in bloom now. So usually they say it lasts for like a few weeks. And so, yeah, I think they'll be in bloom when I'm there. And I don't think it's going to be raining. So, yeah. All right, Terry Furlong has got some info on this grafting thing. The grafting is because some rootstock are vigorous and some dwarfing. So if you have vigorous rootstock that has poor apples, you can graft good apple onto the root and get more good apples. There you go. I feel like, botanists are the original mad scientists for sure. I mean, historically they've always been. They're just always wanted tinkering with genetics. All right. Pat Hicks says that the trees bloomed early this year. That's what I hear. Because like there was like a warm spell across the country. And Apple and Jerry says you can look for webcams in DC. Oh, that's a good point. All right, let's get to question number 3 for trivia today. All right. So we talked about how the race organizers wanted this event to be a nice little tune-up for the Boston Marathon. So let's talk about the Boston Marathon a little bit in relation to the Cherry Blossom 10 mile. So Bill Rogers first won this event. The first time he won many times. Well, I guess that's the question. Bill Rogers first won this event in 1979. How many times did Boston Billy win the Cherry Blossom 10 mile? So you can guess. So you don't have to know anything about running history. You can just guess a number. Stevie76 says he's on a virtual conference, and the topic this hour is how fraud and abuse has evolved as a result of the pandemic. That's interesting. Do you think that there's more catfishing that's happening now? Because of the pandemic, people can't, or I guess like now at this point, people are meeting up and stuff. I don't know. I just feel like maybe, I don't know. You'll have to let us know, Stevie. All right, so we got some guesses for how many times Bill Rogers, Boston Billy, won the Cherry Blossom 10 mile. Martha comes in with 5. Duke BB's got 6. Devin Patterson with a technically correct answer of many times. Jeff says 10. Lisa says 5 times. Nifty Ninja says 9. Pat Hicks says once. I kind of gave it away. I already said he won multiple times. And it says 11. None of you guys have got the right, all these numbers, and none of you got the right answer yet. KCAA says 3. Devin says 8. Stevie76 says 2.5. Mike Tapman had the answer. That's the right answer. 4. He says, I know he won 4 in a row. He did indeed. And to prove the race directors or the race creators correct that it would be a good tune-up for Boston, Bill Rogers won the Cherry Blossom 10 mile 4 years in a row. 3 of those years, he then went on 2 weeks later to win the Boston Marathon. And in the 4th year, after winning the Cherry Blossom 10 mile, he came in 3rd in the Boston Marathon. So I don't know. Maybe like Chicago needs like a 10, instead of the Chicago Half Marathon being 2 weeks before Chicago Marathon, maybe the Chicago Half Marathon should become a Chicago 10 mile. Because I feel like, I mean, if I work for Boston Billy, that doesn't mean it's going to work for me. But I know I personally have overdone it for the Chicago Half Marathon and kind of regretted it come Chicago Marathon time. So maybe the 10 mile is the better distance to do it for. So there we go. All right. Let's do the next question real quick here. This is my favorite question for today. Because I don't think they could do this now. I don't think that they would. I think it would cause a ruckus. But in the year 2000, the Cherry Blossom 10 mile featured a foot pole finish. You could cross the line under different finish lines. There was like a Democrat finishing line, a Republican finishing line, or undisclosed. So it was like an election year, so I guess you could either say who you were or who you wanted to vote for. So you could either say, you didn't have to say independent, or you didn't have to say Democrat or Republican, then you would go on the undisclosed line. In 2000, for the Cherry Blossom 10 mile for the foot pole, who won the popular vote? So you got a 33% chance of getting it right. Scott, he wants to know if there's any hot dish at the end of the 10 mile. Do they have hot dish at the end of any Minnesota races? I feel like the Minnesota, was it the Twin Cities Marathon? Should be just hot dish. Like all the casserole all like the tater tot casserole you can eat. Martha says, I wish some of the big marathons would have their half marathons the same weekend so one can do a half marathon but enjoy the full festivities. I think that's a good idea. Indianapolis does it that way. Or at least the Monumental Marathon. At least the years that I've done it. The year that I did it, it's been that way. And I think it does work out well. Sometimes there's a little bit confusion in terms of lining up in the corrals because people see like a 3-hour pace flag and think that that's where the 3-hour half marathoner should stand. Sometimes, but other than that little thing, otherwise it works out really well, I think. Shannon says, I saw this on Twitter the other day, or maybe I saw it on Instagram or Strava. CJ Albertson just ran an average 4:59 pace marathon on Sunday, and he's running Boston again. Is he overcooked? I don't know. He's a high mileage guy, so I think he's used to that. So, I'm not sure that that's going to be too much for him. I mean, I would say so, but because he ran like a 26.6 mile run that day. So, all right. So, getting back to the question for who won in the foot pole in the 2000 Cherry Blossom 10 mile. Martha thinks it's undisclosed. Tony would think it was Republican. Inez is running in Bernie Sanders. Devin Patterson says it was the Dems. And JC says, well, I think Chad won that year. That's a good answer. Super 100 says it was Gore. And, all right. Yeah, lots of the answers are all over the place. Democrat, undisclosed, Republican. But for that race, the Democrats won with 44% of the vote. And Republican and undisclosed were tied at 28% each. But I just think that this is a very interesting fact. Immediately after the race, having lost in the popular vote, the Republicans cried foul. And they said that the Democrat finish line was more popular because it was closer than the Republican or the undisclosed finish line. So that's why they say that there was a preference for the Democrat, not because of a political preference or any sort of predictive preference, but because it was just a shorter distance. The race organizers have denied that there was any difference in distance between any of the finishing lines. Such a crazy fact. Only in DC would that happen, right? I mean, it's just amazing. Martha says, typical. And Mark says, Republicans cried foul. JC says, the data should be thrown out. And Vincent said, it's more of those Democratic cheat tactics. Ines, coming over from across the pond, says, some things never change. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. So funny. Super Unjit says, talking about having hot dish at the end of a race. Super Unjit says that we just had a race in Twin Cities called the Hot Dash that has hot dish afterwards. He said, I didn't do it, but I saw a lot of friends on socials who did. And Scotty B says, yes, the Hot Dash 10 mile in Minnesota. Five options. It was yummy. They should do a foot poll on that, or I guess a belly poll. See which is the most popular hot dish. But I didn't know that. You guys should have told me about that. Was it last weekend? I couldn't have done. Well, I guess no, I couldn't have done it last weekend. Maybe I could have signed up, but I would have had to. Well, actually, maybe I could have made that work. Probably not. But now that's on my list. I'm going to do that one next year. Hot Dash. Were they any? You said it was yummy. I want to know what the options were. I wonder. There probably weren't vegetarian options. I guess though, when in Rome, I maybe would have had to have made an exception. But that sounds amazing. KCA says hot dish, is that a casserole? Hot dish is a casserole. That's the colloquial term, I suppose. The local term for casserole. And I think it's only Minnesota. I don't think that do people in like Wisconsin call it hot dish? I don't think they do. Like even like northern Wisconsin, like closer to the like northern border of I don't want to say northern border, but closer to the northern rather than like the Illinois side. I don't think that they say hot dish anywhere else except for Minnesota. Pat Hicks says the Amish Country Half Marathon in Ohio has noodles at the end. They're delicious. I bet they are. My mother-in-law makes she makes her own chicken noodle soup. It's very similar to what some people call chicken and dumplings, where they're not dumplings in the way that an Asian person would think of when they think about dumplings, but more in terms of like little, almost kind of like thick sheets of pasta, and like they're egg noodles, but they're cut very very thick and by hand, and they're rustic and they're different thicknesses. So sometimes it's doughier than others, sometimes it's chewier. It's nice to hit the different textures, but it works. It works. I think I could definitely go for that. Mark, so what was the other colloquial food term? A loose meat sandwich for a sloppy Joe, or a made right. That's what you call them in Iowa. Yeah. Mark says I learned so much from this channel. Yeah. Yeah. Louis says noodles at the end of a half marathon, and all I got after the LA marathon was a banana and water. Yeah. Oh man, but I chugged that one. I was so thirsty at the end of the race. I wasn't thirsty during the race, and I felt like the weather was perfect, and I felt like I did a pretty good job of getting enough noon in during the race. But I definitely got thirsty towards the end a little bit. Eric says we have the loose meats by Arby's. Nice. All right. Let's go to this is a really interesting trivia question. I don't know who's gonna be able to get. Yeah, I think you might. There's a hint in there. There's a hint in there for you. Last question for the trivia for today. All right. So in 2020, normally this race is in April, but in April 2020, lots of things had to be canceled or postponed. So when 2020 was canceled, the Credit Union Cherry Blossom Organizing Committee created the Updog 10 miler later in the year. For which fellow organizing committee? Oh, I put the answer in the thing. Oh no, I totally messed up, guys. Man, I hope you guys didn't see it. Maybe you guys didn't see it. Did you guys see it? I think you guys saw it. I messed up. Sorry. So which fellow organizing committee member of the Cherry Blossom race did the Updog get made for? Man, I'm sorry, I messed that one up. Okay. Someone saw it. Some of you guys saw it. Some of you guys didn't. If you guys saw it, pretend you didn't see it. Or just let other people answer. But let's see. Shannon says she didn't see it. And if she did, she'd still get it wrong. Luis says he saw it, but he doesn't know how to write the name again. All right, so the question is kind of confusing. So then for those of you listening on the podcast, you wouldn't have seen it. So one of the people on the organizing committee for the Cherry Blossom 10 miler didn't get to run it in 2020. And so what they did was later in the year, the organizing committee put on a different race called the Updog 10 miler for that person. Who was that person? JC with a very good hint. Hint, she ran well in Houston. I think that's like a pretty big hint too. Eric says that's not trivia, man. That's insider knowledge training. I only know it. I didn't know any of these facts. I knew the Japan one, that the cherry blossoms came from Japan. But I didn't know any of the other ones. But there is a very thorough history of the Cherry Blossom 10 mile on the website for the race. So I spent a lot of time reading that today. It was good. All right. So I think there was only one guess because I think everyone else saw it. But Jeff wrote the correct answer, Kira D'Amato. So Kira D'Amato is the one that they made the Updog 10 miler event for, and she invited a whole bunch of other people. I think Emily Sisson ran it. I think Molly Seidel ran it as well. Several other pros came to run it, and it was an event where I think that they were supposed to run it on a Saturday, but the weather was terrible, so they ran it on a Sunday instead, since it was like a small field and it was still kind of COVID times. So the reason that they did it is because she wanted to run an all-women's 10 mile or a women's only, I don't know, is that the term, women's only or all women's 10 mile record, which she did. And so she was able to beat the women's only 10 mile record by like 49 seconds, something like that. So really destroyed the record. The interesting twist on the trivia there is that, oh yeah, there was a siren over here. There's a hospital over that way. So that's why sometimes you'll hear sirens. I'll tell you another interesting fact about the hospital in a minute, but let me finish this last bit of trivia. So Kira D'Amato is, I didn't know this, but Kira D'Amato is on the organizing committee for the Cherry Blossom 10 mile. And they put this event on for her so she could break this record. Starting several years ago, they start the women like 12 minutes ahead of the men. So that way it can be a women's only event, and also so that they can make sure that the women get more attention during this race. The previous record holder for the all-women's 10 mile was someone who ran the Cherry Blossom 10 mile in 2014, 6 years earlier. And one of the people holding the tape when that record was set was Kira D'Amato, because she was an organizing committee member, so they let her hold the tape. And then fast forward to 2020, they set up this event for her, the Updog 10 miler, and she gets to break the tape herself. Isn't that pretty cool? I think it's an amazing story. It's a pretty wild story. And you know what else is really wild? Is like, I've been following Kira D'Amato for several years now, basically because of the podcast that I listen to. They've been highlighting her and spotlighting her and making people like me aware that she's been doing great things. And I know she's been doing well. But then when you kind of like look at her American record in the marathon and then like look backwards, it was all there the entire time, you know? Like it's all lining up. So it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. So yeah, it's an interesting fact. Let's see. Yeah, so there we go. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up with some of you guys in the chat. After I go on a little rant like that, I always have to like do a lot of reading real quick. About the hospital that's over there. So every once in a while in the neighborhood, you'll hear like the ambulances coming by when they're dropping off people. In this neighborhood, there's also a lot of senior living facilities. A lot of high rises where the whole thing is like one giant senior living, assisted living type of facility. So there's a lot of times there's just like ambulances that just go down the street. They go like 3-4 blocks if they need to take people to the hospital. So there's pretty regular to hear ambulances. But there was a time where it took me a while to figure it out. But every time I would try to put my daughter, when she was a little baby, when I would try to put her to bed, she would always, and it was always such a hard time putting her to bed. Just as she would fall asleep, I swear, like every time, I was like trying to do like my tiptoe backwards out of the room, back away from the crib, just try to make your way out. As I was doing that, every time, like clockwork, the ambulance would show up. And then I realized for whatever reason, it was just because of the shift change. And whoever was shift changing, they always had their lights and sirens on every time they came through. It was so annoying. It was like every day. And then I just changed my daughter's bedtime. And I don't know if they still do that when they do the shift change, but it was like every time. So obnoxious. Brendan's here. He says, good afternoon. We're all having a fantastic Tuesday. That feels like a Thursday. Why does it feel like a Thursday to you? Do you have a holiday this week? Do you have some days off coming up? Or what? Eric says, today did a slow, low 10 mile this morning and some new compression half tights. It's a weird feeling. Feel okay though, but compression shorts are not meant for some of us with bellies. He's got a belly shelf. Yeah, I know that fit can be a little bit difficult for lots of different body types, and with half tights, you got to really be able to nail it. I think that's why a lot of companies don't make them, which I only realized that a couple weekends ago after talking to some people who make clothes. So I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. But I'm a big fan of the compression. I don't really like it so much for the compressive parts of it, but I like it because I don't know. They're not flopping around. I can put stuff in the pockets, and that's not gonna like bounce all around either, So like, I like that. And it says Emma, his daughter, was terrible at getting to sleep. It seems like she's having an easier time with her daughter. Well, that's nice. You don't hope a little bit though that like when she had a hard time getting you to sleep that like maybe some of that will be revisited on her too. I feel like sometimes with parents it can go either way. Once like there's like the kids have kids, then it's like, do you want them to like be able to more fully relate to what you went through, or you just hope for them to have easy, smooth sailing? Yeah, I remember one time. My wife and we used to travel with my wife when she would go on a lot of her work trips. Like before we had the baby, and it was just my daughter, and when she was a baby and she wasn't in like school or anything, and we could just take off for a while. And so we would go, and one time we were in San Diego staying at a hotel. It was a really nice hotel, and we were sure we were going to get kicked out because she was just crying her head off. My wife was at a work function, and I was just trying to get her to sleep. And she got to the point, I don't know how we got here, but somehow I figured out that if I put her in the baby carrier, which is my favorite way to like carry the baby, like the front loaded one, sometime I would have her face me, sometime I would have her face out, like some sort of weird baby alien, And she never liked to be like rocked. She didn't like being rocked, and she didn't like being sat still. She needed just like a little bit of motion. Kind of like how some kids need to be driven around in a car for them to fall asleep. I think it's like the rumbling of the butt. There's something like very comforting about it. So I always try to like either do that, like do a little shimmy. Sometimes she liked it, sometimes she didn't. But during this trip in San Diego, the only thing that would get her to calm down was if I did walking lunges. So I'm in this really nice hotel. It's got like floor to ceiling windows, and anyone else in downtown San Diego could probably see me doing it. And I got a baby on my front side, and I'm doing walking lunges around the couch in this hotel, just trying to get this baby to fall asleep. I was so tired that trip. Oh man! And then later that next day, I went to a place, and I got some lunch. And I ordered I brought her baby food, and I was gonna order an appetizer, a meal, and dessert. I was like, I'm gonna be here for a while. This is gonna be great. I'm like, I need some food. I need to eat. And so I have the baby there. I put her in the high chair next to me. First course comes out. I think I ordered an appetizer and a meal. I don't think I had ordered dessert. But the first like the appetizer comes out, and I had these like duck taquitos, which were, I was like, that sounds delicious. I want to eat that. And as soon as they came out, the baby reaches out with both hands like this and slams them as hard as she can. And there's like a ring of them, you know, like kind of like a sunflower shape, you know, of the taquitos. And they all fly up into the air. And I'm just trying to like catch them and, you know, collect them and pick some of them off the ground and stuff. And she starts freaking out because she just wants to slap everything. So like I'd been there for literally like 10 minutes. And I'm like, can you, everything that I ordered, can you just put it in a box for me so I can go? Oh, that's a big one that I remember. Yeah, Luis says, I didn't get to thank the crying baby on Sunday of the LA Marathon at 3 a.m. Well, at least I got a good breakfast before the marathon. Yeah, I mean, but you have to get up so early for that marathon anyway, you know. Elizabeth D. Molina says, hi, Mike. First post, welcome. Says, how do you choose a race day shoe? Running first, Boston. Awesome. I have new pairs of Alpha Flies and Vapor Flies. Should I try them out in a long run to see which one works best for me? I mean, that's kind of how I tend to do it, is like there'll be a long run. If there's a long run with some marathon pace miles in it, that's usually what I'll look for. But, you know, we're starting to get a little bit close. So I don't know if you've already done your longest run or if you maybe still have one coming up this weekend. That'd be a good time to do it. If you don't, one of your kind of like taper workouts might be like a short-ish run, but with some efforts at marathon pace. That's where I would test them out to see kind of like which one you like better. I would say, I mean, I don't know anything about, you know, your running form or your running style and the other shoes that you might like. But for me, I would probably, of course, like Boston, pick the Alpha Flies over the Vapor Flies. That would probably be the way that I would be leaning if I was picking between those two. But there's lots of people with strong preferences either way, and some people that are like, either one, they're both really good. So I don't think you're going to make a terrible decision either way, but I would, if you can, give them a test on something where you're going to be running that marathon effort. And it says, Cal and his son was very easy going as a baby in comparison to the daughter. And later on, he would ask to go to bed. That's amazing. That's nice. One of my nephews did that too. He would just get tired at the end of the night. He'd be like, Mom, how come you didn't put me to bed? I'm tired. And I'm like, whoa, that's amazing. I mean, of all the things to have like a little bit of a mini tantrum over. Like, why am I not sleeping already? He's a man ahead of his years, I guess. All right. Diego Gaspar says, good afternoon, Co. I did 10K at Reaching for the Cure run in Irvine, California. I was able to PR, awesome, with a 43:41 time 1 week after the LA Marathon. Awesome. That's fantastic. That means you got some time you could shave off that 10K. So that's pretty cool. Really, really cool. Congratulations, Diego. Nice work. And Vincent wants to know, is the Vaporfly 2 good for a 10K on the road? I think it is. I think that personally, I'm kind of like, I look at the Vaporfly as more of like the 5K to half marathon shoe, and then the Alpha Fly as the marathon shoe. I know not everyone sees it that way, but for me, that's kind of how like I differentiate between the two. That being said, one of my fastest marathons was in the next percent. So, I mean, it could certainly run a marathon well, you know. See, Nethico says, Mike, I have the Reebok Foot Ride 3 and I'm loving them. What do you think is the max distance in those? 15K or a half? Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm assuming you're just talking like a regular run, not like a race. And I think that it depends on kind of, I think a lot of that's going to come down to preference. For me, I think I've taken, I remember I had the Float Ride Grow. I don't think I took the Float Ride 3 on very many long runs. The Float Ride Grow, I think I took on like maybe 13-mile runs, which is like the Float Ride 2. Like 13-mile runs, maybe some 15-mile runs. And that worked out fine. But I think much longer than that, I probably would have preferred some extra cushion underfoot. So I think that probably the better way to think of it in terms of like as hard numbers as like on the long end of your medium runs, you know, maybe towards long run distance. But if it's a real long run, I probably wouldn't reach for it. But everything from short, easy to like medium length run, I think it'd be fine. All right, let's do. All right, we got some questions here before I get to the last trivia question, the bonus question, which is a little bit anticlimactic. Vincent says, would you pick the Tempo Next Percent or the Vaporfly 2s? I've never run in the Tempo Next Percent. It's kind of a weird shoe in my opinion. I know like people like Ben Parks love it, but it's just not something that's, I've never tried it yet, so I can't answer that one. All right, let's see, and then Reese Dawson, just back from the club's first trail run of the year. That sounds fun. Man, I have so many good trail shoes right now, but like, I'm not stuck in Chicago, but I'm not near any of the trails that I'm like want to run on. But not this weekend, but the following weekend, we're heading over to Iowa, so I'll be able to get some trail miles in. I'm looking forward to it. Secretly, speaking of the Tempo Next Percent, says, I bought some Tempo Next Percent for my sister for a half marathon as they were cheap. Do you think they'll be okay? It is a flat and fast course. Yeah, I mean, I think for the people that it works for, I think for faster running, like when you're trying to race a half marathon, I think that's what it's best suited for, and that's what it does best for. I think a lot of people like thought it would be kind of like a peg turbo, and they kind of use it for everything, and that's where I'm like, I don't think that's how you're supposed to use that one. So I wouldn't do it for like my easy day running, but for faster running, you know, tempo efforts, or half marathon efforts, I think that's kind of its sweet spot. Chris Tech says, over the last week, I've seen people casually strolling around when leading in coffee in Vaporflies and Alpha Flies. Interesting choice for a daily walker. Yeah, I see a lot of it too here in Chicago. Definitely see it everywhere. I mentioned to you guys the other day, I was driving the kids to rock climbing, and we passed like a high school on the way. If I take the wrong way, then we pass the high school. And by my wrong way, I mean it's the most direct way, but because there's a high school there, and we drive usually when high school is getting out, it's just really congested. And I've definitely seen some kids like walking home from school in Vaporflies, and I'm like, oh well, okay, to each their own. That works. I'm like, what is he running then? You know, but cool. Yeah. And New York 77 says, hello, Co, how are you? What are the threshold workouts? I'm a new runner. I always listen about this from friends. Greeting from New York. So threshold workouts are, it's at your, it's like a physiological point that you run in, where if you kind of cross that threshold, then all of a sudden your body needs a lot more oxygen to be able to run that much harder. And so one of the things that is like a core tenet of a lot of different running programs, but like people like Coach Bob Larson or Coach Vigil, people that have coached some really great American distance runners, emphasize is a lot of time spent running at threshold, kind of like at the max level of that before you kind of cross over into that red zone. And that's something that I like to put into a lot of my running as well. And threshold pace, there's like certain like biological, like if you're in a lab, there's certain things they could test. They'll like prick your finger or your ear and get blood, and there's things they could look at. But the easy way to do it if you don't have access to a lab is a pace that is somewhere in between your 10K race pace and your half marathon race pace. Another way to look at it is a pace that you can race at for 40 to 60 minutes and like be like fully spent. And so other people call it your 10-mile race pace or your 15K race pace. So something that would be able to, you could hold like for that 40 to 60 minutes of time. So it's not like an all-out sprint. It's not like you're running as fast as a 5K, and it's faster than marathon effort though. So it's somewhere in between there. And that's what I think that's an important workout for distance runners, like people that are racing half marathons and marathons, and probably 10 miles, probably also even 10K runners too, should be doing a lot of. So that's kind of, hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. The thing is, when you're spending a lot of time there, it's really tiring and it's hard. So you don't want to do like 40 minutes all at once. I don't even usually like to do a combined 40 minutes. So that's where like repetitions come in. So my favorite threshold workout is 6 times 6 minutes at that threshold effort with 1 minute like walking recovery, or sometimes even standing around, but walking, or if you can jog, but probably walking because it's a pretty hard effort. Maybe build up to it. Usually if it's early in the season, I'll do like a 3 minutes at a time, and then I'll build up to 4, 5, and then 6. So you get there and it's hard. So you have to kind of learn to get uncomfortable a little bit. And you have to also learn how not to overdo it in the first couple, because it's kind of easy to overdo it in the first couple. But that's something that's really going to stress the body in a positive way that your body will respond well. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's do the last question for the bonus. We kind of already talked about it a little bit. Well, we mentioned about, what is it? What was after the LA Marathon? What is the post-race beverage for the credit union Cherry Blossom 10 Mile? Any guesses? What's the beverage? The race is in DC, but that's really just misdirection. It's not a hint. Mika says, in the meantime, while we're getting some answers in here, because I've been using the Clifton 6 that I ran into the ground as my daily walkers for a while. Next shoe that's going to end of their life running-wise are the Fuel Cell TCs. Too rad for a daily walking shoe? I think that'd be a great walking shoe. I mean, it might feel a little bit too bouncy. Man, I missed that shoe. That was a good shoe. I really liked it a lot. It was like the Rebel version 1, but like a racing version or a workout version of that, and it was just so nice. I thought it looked great as well. Yeah, that was a good one. I missed that one. I think you should go for it. I think it'll be fine. All right. Martha thinks that the post-race beverage is going to be beer. Vincent says Cherry Coke. Cherry Coke makes so much sense. What a great answer. Marty says Cherry Blossom tea. Is that such a thing? Oh, Callaway wants to know his answer, Kira D'Amato. That'd be funny if, because she's on the planning committee, there was like Oreos. Oreos really should sponsor her. That'd be an amazing. Like if she was like sponsored by Mondelez, like Nabisco, that'd be pretty cool. Steve also says Cherry Coke. Jason also says Freedom Fries. That'd be pretty good. Man, a race with French fries at the end. That's motivating. That's really motivating. Nifty Niche says Cherry Brandy. Ooh, now we're getting spicy. Pat Hickson sake. That would be a good one too. That'd be a lot of fun. JC says I don't know what that is. Kirschwasser. I'm not sure. But the answer is Gatorade Endurance. That's disappointing. Not disappointing. I'm sure it'll be delicious, and I'm thankful for Gatorade being a sponsor of the race, I suppose. And here's the thing. The women's race starts at 7:18 in the morning, and they usually finish in like 9 minutes. So like the race is done by like 8:20 in the morning on a Sunday in the spring. So it's not exactly beer o'clock yet, so I guess it makes sense. I forget with some of these shorter races that it's like, oh, it's gonna be like not even 9 o'clock when I'm done. Yeah. Louise says they should bring tamarind balls. There we go. That would wake people up on a Sunday. Secretly says, when in the U.S., my family tried Cherry Coke and after a couple sips, threw it in the bin. I don't understand how anyone can drink it. I can tell you what, I do not like Cherry Coke. You know what I don't like even more, or I like less? Vanilla Coke. Absolutely gross. It's disgusting. I don't know. But Mark Ingham says, boo to the Gatorade Endurance. Martha says, boo indeed. Martha says an espresso would be better. That would be nice, like a coffee bar. Oh, yeah. At the hot chocolate races, they have like that, the really nice hot chocolate afterwards, as the namesake race goes. It's kind of nice. At least in Chicago it is, because it's like right around Halloween, so it's chilly by then. Pat Hickson should be body armor. Yeah, it's like a little double entendre there. Okay, JC says the Kirschwasser is cherry brandy. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. That makes sense. Kirschwasser. Okay. You guys are much more world travel than I am. All right. I think that's going to be it for today, everybody. Thanks, everyone, for playing along with Trivia Tuesday, the Cherry Blossom edition. Tomorrow's video, I'm going to talk about the Cumulus 24. I've run it a couple of times now. And spoiler alert, it's really good. I like to shoot quite a bit. I'll tell you all about it in tomorrow's video. And then we'll do another live stream tomorrow. No theme, just hanging out. Same time as today, 1 p.m. Central Time. Hopefully I'll see you again. Thanks, everyone who came for the first time. And then everyone who has been here before. I'll love to see all you guys in the chat. Till I see you again, be safe out there, everybody. Thanks.